An ex-con rescued a lost child, never suspecting she was the warden's daughter who would grant his freedom. That was the headline Marcus Bishop never imagined would one day describe his life. A life that had, until recently, been measured in prison yard steps and the slow tick of a 20-year sentence. The January wind cut through his threadbare jacket as Marcus hunched his shoulders against the cold. 3 months since his release, and freedom still felt like an ill-fitting suit. Too loose in some places, painfully tight in others. He tucked his scarred hands deeper into his pockets and quickened his pace along the deserted street, head down against both the biting cold and the reflexive stares of passers-by who somehow always seemed to know. Ex-con. The label clung to him like a shadow. The halfway house stood 10 blocks ahead, its 10 p.m. curfew looming. Miss it, and he'd violate parole. Miss it, and he'd go back. The thought alone made his chest tighten, the familiar panic rising like floodwater. 20 years for a crime you didn't commit changes a man, his cellmate Diego had once told him. Either hardens him to stone or cracks him wide open. Marcus wasn't sure which had happened to him, perhaps both. He paused at the corner market, counting the wrinkled bills in his pocket. The meager remains of his last paycheck from the loading dock. Enough for a sandwich, maybe. His stomach growled in anticipation, the morning's stale coffee long gone. 3 applications filled out today, 3 more rejections likely to follow. No one wanted to hire a man with his record, fabricated though it was. The shop bell tinkled as he entered, and the elderly Korean owner glanced up, then back down, his face carefully neutral. Marcus had been coming here for weeks, and Mr. Park had yet to smile at him. Just the turkey sandwich, Marcus said quietly. And maybe a coffee? Mr. Park nodded, moving to the coffee machine. Marcus waited, eyes drifting to the small television mounted in the corner. The local news flashed images of a police search underway in Oakwood Park, just 2 blocks from where he stood. Missing child, Mr. Park said, following his gaze. 6-year-old girl, been gone since this afternoon. Something cold and heavy settled in Marcus's chest. His niece Maya had been 6 when he went away. He'd missed her entire childhood, relegated to a few supervised visits and school photos sent by his sister. They searching the park? He asked. Mr. Park nodded. And the neighborhoods. Parents very worried. Marcus paid for his sandwich and coffee, the food suddenly less important than before. Outside, the temperature had dropped further, and a light snow had begun to fall. He should head straight to the halfway house. He should not get involved. He should not draw attention to himself. Yet his feet carried him toward Oakwood Park. The search was evident immediately, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, voices calling a name he couldn't quite make out. Several police cruisers were parked along the perimeter, their lights casting rhythmic blue and red shadows across the snow-dusted ground. Marcus hung back, watching. An officer would certainly recognize him as an ex-con. His parole officer had made sure the local precinct knew his face. Being here, so close to a situation involving a child, would raise immediate suspicion. 20 years of wrongful imprisonment had taught him that much. Innocence was no protection. He was turning to leave when he heard it. A small, hiccuping sob coming from the dense rhododendron bushes to his right, well away from the main search area. Marcus froze. The sob came again, followed by a tiny voice. Hello? Is anyone there? His heart hammered against his ribs. He looked toward the search party, now moving deeper into the park, away from where he stood, then back to the bushes. Hey, he called softly, approaching slowly. You okay in there? The sobbing paused. I'm lost, came the reply, a girl's voice trembling with cold and fear. Marcus crouched down, peering into the shadows beneath the bushes. A small face looked back at him, tear-streaked and frightened. Dark hair framed large eyes that regarded him with wary hope. My name's Marcus, he said gently. Are you the little girl everyone's looking for? She nodded, lower lip quivering. I'm Lily. I got lost and it got dark and I got scared and hid. It's okay to be scared, Marcus said, his voice softer than it had been in years. But there are a lot of people looking for you. Your parents must be really worried. My mom died, Lily said matter-of-factly, the way only children can speak of devastating things. It's just me and my dad now. Something twisted in Marcus's chest. I'm sorry about your mom, he said. How about we get you back to your dad? She hesitated. Are you a bad person? Dad says not to talk to strangers. Marcus swallowed hard. Was he a bad person? 20 years in prison would suggest so. But he had never been what they claimed. Never the armed robber who shot that security guard. Never the dangerous criminal the jury had condemned. I'm not a bad person, he said finally. But your dad is right about being careful around strangers. How about this? I'll help you get to where the police are, and they can take you to your dad. Lily considered this, then shook her head. I don't want the police. They have guns. Dad says they're helpers, but guns are scary. Marcus couldn't argue with that logic. Okay, he said. Then how about I walk with you to find your dad? You can stay a little bit away from me if that makes you feel safer. Lily crawled out from under the bushes, revealing a pink coat now smudged with dirt and tiny sneakers that lit up with each step. She stood a cautious distance from him, studying his face. You look sad, she declared. Marcus blinked, caught off guard by her directness. Sometimes I am, he admitted. My dad says it's okay to be sad about things that make you sad. Your dad sounds smart. He is, she said proudly. He's the boss of a very important place. Marcus smiled despite himself. Is that right? Well, let's go find this very important boss, shall we? He pointed toward the searchlights. Those people over there are looking for you. We need to go that way. Lily nodded but made no move to walk. Instead, she extended her small gloved hand toward him. I'm cold, she explained. Marcus stared at her outstretched hand, a simple gesture of trust that he hadn't experienced in decades. Slowly, he reached out, engulfing her tiny hand in his scarred one. Your hand is big, she observed, like my dad's. They walked toward the search party, Lily's sneakers lighting up with each step. Marcus felt increasingly nervous as they approached the police. His presence would raise questions, suspicions. His parole officer would hear about this, but he couldn't just leave her. When they were about 50 yards from the nearest officer, Marcus gently stopped. Lily, he said, kneeling to her level. I need you to walk over to those officers by yourself, okay? Tell them your name and that you were lost. Aren't you coming? She asked, frowning. It's better if I don't, he said, but I'll watch to make sure you get to them safely. But you helped me, she insisted. Dad says we should always say thank you when people help us. Before Marcus could respond, a deep voice cut through the night air. Lily! A tall man broke away from the search group, running toward them. Even in the dim light, Marcus could see the man's uniform. Not police, but corrections. A prison guard's uniform. No, not just a guard. The insignia, the bearing. This was a ranking officer. Marcus's blood ran cold. Of all the children in the city, he had found the daughter of someone from the prison system. The man reached them, sweeping Lily into his arms with a sob of relief. Oh my God, Lily. Where were you? Are you hurt? I'm okay, Daddy, she said, hugging him fiercely. I got lost and hid in the bushes because I was scared. But then this man found me and helped me. The father looked up, noticing Marcus for the first time. Their eyes met, and Marcus saw the exact moment recognition dawned. Bishop, the man said, his voice hollow with shock. Marcus felt the world tilting beneath him. Not just any corrections officer, he knew this man, Warden James Harrington. The man who had overseen the last 5 years of his incarceration at Eastgate Correctional. Warden Harrington, Marcus acknowledged, already backing away. You know each other? Lily asked, looking between them. Yes, her father said slowly, still holding her tight. Mr. Bishop used to live where I work. Marcus nodded stiffly. I should go. Glad she's safe. He turned to leave, his heart pounding. This encounter could only end badly for him. Bishop, wait, the warden called. Marcus paused but didn't turn. Thank you, Harrington said, his voice carrying a weight of emotion Marcus couldn't interpret. For finding her, for bringing her back. Marcus nodded once, then continued walking, desperate to put distance between himself and this dangerous coincidence. He needed to get back to the halfway house before curfew, needed to forget this night had ever happened. But life, Marcus would soon learn, had other plans. The following morning dawned gray and unforgiving. Marcus's small room at the halfway house felt especially confining as he dressed for his shift at the loading dock. 3 hours of work today, barely enough to cover his week's expenses. His mind kept returning to the night before, to Lily's trusting hand in his, to Warden Harrington's stunned face. He had spent 5 years under Harrington's supervision at Eastgate. The warden had never been cruel, but neither had he been particularly kind. Just a distant figure of authority who occasionally toured the blocks, nodding at the inmates without really seeing them. Marcus shook off the memories and headed out. The snow from the previous night had turned to slush, soaking through his worn shoes as he walked to the bus stop. The morning passed in a blur of heavy lifting and the constant ache in his back. A souvenir from a prison yard fight he hadn't started, but had certainly finished. By noon, his shift was over, and Marcus found himself with nowhere to go but back to the halfway house. The community center 3 blocks over had a small library. Sometimes he went there to read, to remember what it felt like to lose himself in something other than survival. He was halfway there when a black SUV pulled alongside him. The window rolled down, revealing Warden Harrington's face. "Bishop," he called. "Got a minute?" Every instinct Marcus had developed in prison screamed at him to keep walking. Nothing good ever came from authority figures seeking you out. But curiosity or perhaps resignation made him stop. "Warden," he acknowledged. "James," the man corrected. "I'm not your warden anymore." He gestured to the passenger seat. "Would you get in?" "I'd like to talk." "About what?" "Lily wants to thank you properly. And I have some things I'd like to discuss." Marcus hesitated. "I've got a parole officer who wouldn't be too happy about me getting in cars with strangers." A faint smile touched Harrington's lips. "I'm hardly a stranger, Bishop. And I've already spoken with Officer Mendez this morning." "You're clear." That was unexpected. Marcus studied the man's face, looking for deceit and finding none. Slowly, he walked around the vehicle and climbed into the passenger seat. They drove in silence for several blocks, the tension between them thick enough to touch. Finally, Harrington spoke. "Lily hasn't stopped talking about you." The man with the sad eyes who saved her. Marcus stared out the window. "I just happened to be there. Most people would have kept walking. Especially someone in your situation." "You mean someone with a record?" Marcus said flatly. Harrington nodded. "Yes." More silence stretched between them. "Where are we going?" Marcus finally asked. "I thought we might get lunch." Harrington replied. "There's a diner up ahead. Best meatloaf in the city." The suggestion was so mundane, so normal, that Marcus almost laughed. Lunch with the warden. Just another Tuesday. The diner was warm and smelled of coffee and fried potatoes. They settled into a booth near the back, away from other customers. A waitress brought menus and water, eyeing them curiously. The warden still in his uniform, Marcus in his work clothes. "Order whatever you want," Harrington said. "My treat." Marcus raised an eyebrow but said nothing, scanning the menu for the cheapest items. "The meatloaf really is good," Harrington offered. "Fine. Meatloaf." After the waitress took their orders, Harrington leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. "I've been reviewing your case file." Marcus stiffened. "Why?" "Because I've had my doubts about it for some time. And after what you did for Lily, I needed to know more. There's nothing to know. I was convicted. I served my time. End of story." Harrington shook his head. "We both know it's not that simple. The eyewitness testimony was shaky at best. The murder weapon was never found. And your court-appointed attorney barely put up a defense." Marcus's throat tightened. For years, he had screamed these same facts into the void, finding no one who would listen. Why do you care?" he asked, his voice rough. "Now, after all this time?" Harrington was quiet for a long moment. "I've been warden at Eastgate for 8 years. Before that, I was a guard for 12. I've seen thousands of inmates come through those gates. After a while, you start to recognize patterns." "Patterns?" "The guilty ones carry themselves differently than the innocent," Harrington said simply. "The guilty ones adapt faster. Prison makes sense to them in a way. The innocent ones, they never stop looking bewildered, like they're waiting for someone to tell them it was all a mistake." Marcus swallowed hard, looking away. "You had that look every day for 20 years, Harrington continued. "I noticed. I just didn't do anything about it. And that's been weighing on me." The waitress brought their food, momentarily halting the conversation. Marcus stared down at the meatloaf, his appetite gone. What exactly are you saying?" he finally asked. Harrington cut into his food deliberately. "I'm saying I believe you were wrongfully convicted. And I'm saying I might be in a position to help set that right." Hope, dangerous, painful hope, flared in Marcus's chest. He tamped it down immediately. Hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. "I've filed appeals," he said flatly. "Everyone denied." "Appeals follow procedure," Harrington said. "But there are other channels. I have connections in the DA's office with the Innocence Project. If we can get your case reopened..." "We?" Marcus interrupted, anger suddenly flaring. "There is no we, Warden. You had 8 years to look into my case while I was under your supervision." "Why now?" "Because I found your daughter? You feel like you owe me?" Harrington met his gaze steadily. "Yes," he said simply. "I do owe you, for Lily. But it's more than that." He paused. "My wife, Lily's mother, was a defense attorney. She always said the system was broken, that for every guilty person locked up, there was an innocent one right alongside them. She made me promise before she died that I would remember that. that I would do what I could. I'm sorry about your wife, Marcus said, some of his anger fading. Breast cancer, Harrington said quietly. 2 years ago, Lily still has nightmares. They ate in silence for a while, the weight of shared grief, albeit very different kinds, settling between them. Let me help you, Bishop, Harrington finally said. Not just because of Lily, but because it's the right thing to do, and because I should have done it sooner. Marcus set down his fork, studying the man across from him. The warden had never been cruel, but he had been part of the system that took 20 years of Marcus's life. Could he trust him now? What exactly are you proposing? He asked cautiously. First, a better place to stay than that halfway house. I have a garage apartment. It's small, but it's private. You'd have your own entrance, your own space. Marcus frowned. I can't accept that. You can and you will, Harrington said firmly. Consider it back rent for the years the state wrongfully held you. Despite everything, Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips. That's one way to look at it. Second, a job. A real one, not 3 hours at a loading dock. My brother-in-law runs a construction company. They're always looking for reliable workers. With records, he'll take my word that you're trustworthy. Marcus took a sip of water, trying to process this unexpected turn of events. And the third thing? We work together to get your conviction overturned. I have resources, connections. You have the truth. Between us, we might have a chance. And if we fail? Harrington shrugged. Then at least we tried. But you'll still have the apartment and the job. Why would you do all this? Because my daughter sees the good in you? Harrington said simply. And because I've spent too many years as part of a system that sometimes gets it wrong. This is my chance to get something right. Marcus sat back overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, Harrington replied. That's all I'm asking for now. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll think about it. As they left the diner, the January air felt somehow less bitter than before. Marcus walked alongside Harrington to the SUV, his mind racing with possibilities he hadn't dared consider in decades. Oh, Harrington said, reaching into his pocket. I almost forgot. Lily made this for you. He handed over a folded piece of construction paper. Marcus opened it carefully. Inside was a child's drawing of 2 stick figures, one small with a pink triangle dress, one tall with what appeared to be a blue rectangle body. They were holding hands. Above them in wobbly letters, thank you for finding me. Love, Lily. Something cracked open inside Marcus's chest. Something that had been sealed shut for 20 years. He folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into his pocket. Tell her I said thank you, he said, his voice rough. Harrington nodded. Come by for dinner tonight. You can tell her yourself. As the SUV pulled away, Marcus stood on the sidewalk, the weight of the drawing in his pocket feeling strangely like the first piece of a new foundation, one on which he might, against all odds, begin to build a life. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the courthouse hallway, his heart hammering against his ribs. The suit he wore, bought for him by Harrington for this very occasion, felt stiff and formal, but not nearly as confining as his prison uniform had been. You ready? Harrington asked, standing beside him. Marcus took a deep breath. As I'll ever be. The doors to the courtroom opened, and they walked in together. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind, moving into the garage apartment, starting work with Harrington's brother-in-law, and spending countless evenings poring over case files with Harrington. Lily had become a fixture in his life, bringing him drawings, asking endless questions, and somehow treating him with a simple acceptance that made his chest ache. She had no concept of what prison meant, only that Marcus used to live where Daddy works, but now he lives in our backyard house. The Innocence Project had taken his case after Harrington made some calls. New evidence had emerged. The real perpetrator, dying of liver cancer in another state, had confessed to the crime for which Marcus had been convicted. DNA testing that hadn't been available 20 years ago now confirmed what Marcus had claimed all along. He had never been at the scene. The hearing today was a formality, but an important one. The judge would officially vacate his conviction, clearing his record completely. As they took their seats, Marcus felt a small hand slip into his. Lily had insisted on coming, wearing her special dress, for the occasion. She didn't understand the proceedings, but she understood they were important. Is this when you get your freedom paper? She whispered. Marcus smiled down at her. Something like that. Daddy says you were already free, but now everybody will know it. Harrington, overhearing, gave Marcus a nod. In the months they had worked together, the former warden had become something Marcus had never expected. A friend. The judge entered and everyone rose. The proceedings moved quickly, legal language flowing around Marcus like water. And then suddenly the moment arrived. In light of the new evidence and the confession of Ronald James Mercer, this court hereby vacates the conviction of Marcus Bishop and expunges all related records. Mr. Bishop, on behalf of the state, I offer our sincere apology for this miscarriage of justice. The gavel came down with a crack that seemed to reverberate through Marcus's entire body. Free. Truly free. Lily bounced on her toes, sensing the importance of the moment even if she didn't fully comprehend it. Does this mean you're happy now? She whispered. Marcus looked down at her, then at Harrington, then back to the judge who had just given him back his life. Yeah, he said softly. I think it does. Outside the courthouse, standing in the warm summer sunshine, Marcus took a moment just to breathe. Harrington stood beside him, Lily between them, her hands holding each of theirs. What now? Harrington asked. Marcus looked out at the city stretching before him, the same city that had once been his prison, now transformed into a landscape of possibilities. I don't know, he admitted. I never thought I'd get this far. Well, Harrington said, the construction company would be happy to keep you on. The apartment is yours for as long as you want it. And, he hesitated, Lily and I would be glad to have you around. Yeah, Lily piped up. You promised to teach me how to build a birdhouse, remember? Marcus smiled down at her. I remember. So you'll stay? She pressed. Marcus looked at Harrington, seeing in the other man's eyes the same journey he had taken himself. From suspicion to understanding, from duty to compassion. I'll stay, he said. As they walked down the courthouse steps together, the ex-con, the warden, and the little girl who had somehow brought them together, Marcus felt something he had almost forgotten how to recognize. Not just freedom, but belonging. The headline that had seemed so improbable all those months ago, an ex-con rescued a lost child, never suspecting she was the warden's daughter who would grant his freedom, had become the first chapter in a story still being written. A story about second chances, unexpected connections, and the freedom that comes not just from legal exoneration, but from being seen, truly seen, by another human being. Marcus looked up at the endless blue sky, feeling for the first time in 20 years the lightness of a man walking into a future unbound by his past. Free.